Buying a home is one of the largest financial transactions most people will ever make. Starting August 17th, did buying a home just become more complicated? Is it true that you will have to sign a buyer broker agreement just to tour a property? Are sellers no longer paying buyer agents? What do I need to know if I want to buy a home starting August 17th? Those are just a few of the questions we're going to answer in today's video, and we're going to get started right now. As a result of the settlement of a class action lawsuit, the way you buy a home is going to change. Here's what the settlement means for home buyers. Number one, you'll have to sign a written agreement with your agent before touring a property. This agreement is called a buyer broker agreement. This agreement must include 4 components concerning compensation. A specific and conspicuous disclosure of the amount or rate of compensation the real estate agent will receive or how this amount will be determined. B, compensation that is objective, a certain amount, a flat fee, a certain percentage, or an hourly rate, and not open-ended. It can't be the buyer or broker compensation shall be whatever the seller is offering to a buyer. The third term prohibits the agent from receiving compensation for brokerage services from any other source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to in the agreement with a buyer. For example, let's say the seller is offering a buyer a 3% seller concession to offset the buyer's costs. The buyer and the buyer's agent have previously agreed to a 2.5% compensation fee. The buyer agent cannot accept 3% if they previously agreed to 2.5%. D, a conspicuous statement that the broker fee and commissions are fully negotiable and not set by law. This agreement is for both in-person and live virtual home tours. Before you sign this agreement, you should ensure that it reflects the terms you have previously negotiated with your agent and that you understand exactly what services and value will be provided and for how much. Do I need a written agreement if I am at an open house? No, you do not need a written agreement if you're speaking with an agent at an open house or if you're just asking about their services. The second major change involves the MLS, or multiple listing service. Compensation will be removed from the MLS. The seller may agree to compensate your buyer's agent. However, it's still permitted, but the offer cannot be shared on the MLS. The MLS is a local marketplace used by both buyer brokers and listing brokers to share information about properties for sale. Buyers can still accept concessions from a seller, such as offers to pay your closing costs. And let's look at a practical example. Let's say you sign an agreement with your buyer's agent and you agree to 2.5% compensation rate. That means if you buy a home for $300,000, you would owe your buyer's agent $7,500. Now, let's say you purchased a home where the seller was offering the purchaser 2.5% in seller concessions. The buyer could use those funds to pay for their buyer's agent. However, what if the seller was offering a 2% in seller concessions? That would mean the seller would pay $6,000 and the buyer would have to cover the difference. In this case, the buyer would have to pay $1,500 to their buyer's agent to pay the agreed upon fee. However, nothing says that you can't make an offer and make your offer contingent on a 2.5% seller concession. Remember, commissions and concessions and compensation are all negotiable. Let's say you find a property and the seller is not offering any compensation to the buyer's agent. Okay, you have a couple of choices. Number one, you can write an offer and make the offer contingent on a 2.5% seller concession. If the seller accepts, hey, you're good to go. But what if the seller says no? That would mean at that point, you would have to pay the agreed upon fee of $7,500 at closing out of your own pocket. What are some tips if you're a buyer? Okay, number one, interview several agents. 2, read the agreement. And A, remember all terms are negotiable. B, Ask for a copy of the agreement before you sign so you have time to read the agreement. And C, you want to ask questions. How long is the agreement? How much do you charge? What if I'm not happy with your services? Do you work in a team or do you work solo? How long have you been in business? What market do you work in? What is your area of expertise? For example, if you're buying an acreage or a farm, that's a different agent from someone like myself who sells inside the city of Omaha. Take the time to vet your agent. Look at the agent's profile. Do they have a website? Look your agent up on Zillow. Look at their past sales. Look at their reviews. Google the name of your agent. Remember, there are great agents from both large and small firms. They could be with a franchise or they could be with a local company. There's great agents at all different types of firms. You are hiring an individual agent. And sometimes it's just a personality fit. You want someone that you like and that's somebody you can trust. Ask your friends or family. Now, don't feel obligated to use your Aunt Bonnie just because she has a real estate license. This is a business decision. Trust me, family can be difficult to work with. Do I even need a buyer's agent? Can I just go to the listing agent? Okay, now sure, that's an option. In Nebraska, we have dual agency. Dual agency is when one agent represents both the buyer and the seller. This is not legal in all states. Dual agency has its drawbacks. Think about it. How can one agent truly represent two opposing sides equally? Dual agency is kind of like having one coach for two opposing teams. You wouldn't want the same coach coaching the Huskers and the Buckeyes on the same time. That just doesn't seem to make sense. Just because something is legal doesn't mean it's a good idea. All real estate is local. There will be small nuances at a local level. Homes perform differently in different climates. Buying a home in Florida is much different than buying a home in Omaha. You want a professional at the local level to help guide you through the process. While all these changes are taking place and that are now in effect, each state is going to have their own individual laws and customs. The settlement provides kind of a general framework, and the settlement still needs to be court approved in November. If you decide to go directly to the listing agent, let's take a moment and talk about agency. Now, in a real estate transaction, you can either be a client or a customer. There's a big difference between a client and a customer. When a homeowner hires an agent to sell their home, that seller is a client of the real estate broker. The listing agent has a fiduciary duty to represent the best interest of the seller. If you are unrepresented, then you're considered a customer. The listing agent does not owe you the same fiduciary duty. This means you're on your own. For some folks, that's just fine. For some people, don't even know what they don't know. Real estate is something that people think they know more about than they really do. It's kind of like property management. People think being a landlord is nothing more than collecting rents and cleaning toilets. It's much more involved. And until people are in the middle of it, they have no idea of all the rules and regulations that are part of property management. Buying a home has changed, and this is just the start. As time goes by, we're going to see more changes and more rules go into an effect.